Good morning. It is Monday, August 15th, 2022, and this is DC Signal to Noise. Okay, since we last talked, the House passed the Inflation Reduction Act. At least I think that's what it's still called. We'll find out from Jim here in a moment. Inflation in July was reported at 8.5%, or was it zero? I keep hearing both. The Senate and the House both left D.C. for the long summer break. Grains are sharply lower this morning. And Jim Wiesemeyer, pro farmer policy analyst, I got to revisit my youth over the weekend and show a steer at the Iowa State Fair. How cool is
Oh,
that?
wow. Now that is very cool.
You
How did
bet.
how did it go?
It went very well. The most important thing is raising money for the Ronald McDonald House Charities and the Friends of Franklin County Cattlemen and the Barkama Charity Foundation raised $37,000 from that one steer.
Wow.
And it looks like the 25 steers in the auction brought over $400,000 for the Ronald McDonald House. It was a very rewarding Saturday, that's for
Yeah, I
sure.
can imagine. That's all good in the aid department.
That's right. That's right. How you doing, buddy? Everything good?
Pretty good. Congress is out, so I'm always in a good shape then. And they're really out until September for their long summer recess. And although they're calling it the Inflation Reduction Act, most either call it the reconciliation measure or really it's a climate change bill.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome, everyone. I'm AgriTalk host Chip Flory. That is Pro Farmer Policy Analyst Jim Wiesemeyer. Good morning, Melody. Melody is already chiming in with some of the comments, but if you would like to be part of the conversation, click on that comments tab and you can jump right in there. Good morning, Gary. We'll get to your thoughts here in just a moment. Jim, I want to start with some of the things that happened over the weekend. And let's go back to last week first, because they did pass the tax, climate, and
Healthcare.
bill, which has been called the Inflation Reduction Act. I think they're changing that and trying to kind of step away from the official title of the bill, but there it is.
Yes, and President Biden has instructed his cabinet, including Secretary Vilsack, to go out and help sell it. And you're going to see that over the next few weeks, Chip. Beginning, this week in Colorado, I think, on Vilsack's part.
Yeah, the messaging, the promotion, whatever you want to call it, it looks like there is a very detailed plan on who is going where, when they're going to be there, and what they're going to talk about and say.
Oh, yeah. The White House sent me a detailed list of all the cabinet people, what they're going to talk about, when, etc. And, they're serious about this because historically, I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat, events like this, you don't see immediate follow through in the polls, Chip. Obama saw that. He didn't get much oomph after the Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. They want to change that. The one exception this time is that climate change could impact the younger voters who really wanted to see some climate change provisions.
Okay, I agree. I agree that it could impact some of those younger voters because of that. I hope they are asking the right questions though about when these provisions will be enacted, because Jim, some of this stuff is years away.
Yes, it is, especially in the healthcare arena, with the major exception being those expiring Obamacare provisions will be extended immediately. And that's millions of dollars, Chip. But you're right. These negotiations for the Medicare drug prescriptions don't begin until 2026, and then only 10. Actually, as a result of this, new uh, medical product coming onto the market, Chip, will actually probably start at a higher level
Right.
than they would have otherwise. So
Right.
this is going to be the big picture.
Exactly, exactly. You bring a new drug onto the market at a much higher price, knowing that the negotiation is going to take place. Uh, and I, I'm, I mean, I hate to be so skeptical about some of this stuff, but if the negotiations are very effective and dramatically lower the costs, what's it going to do to the development of new drugs, Jim?
Yeah, it doesn't send the entrepreneurial signal to the private industry. That is for sure. That's the downside of this. So this is going to be a test case.
You know, it's I don't know if we can call it price controls yet, but every time that you put price controls on something, it becomes scarce.
you know, a governor, if you will.
Yeah.
They want it to be a governor.
Yeah, it's very concerning to me. And what it might all mean going forward. Okay. Um quite a couple of comments here from Gary that I think we need to get to. And this one is from last week too. And then I'll go to the second question, which will get us back to the IRA. But first things first, is COVID officially done with CDC's new guidelines?
It surely de-emphasized. It is not done. I know several friends who just recently got it. I shouldn't laugh because that's the new variant. It
Yeah.
spreads quite widely, Chip. But as far as a government significant involvement, I think we have seen it.
Yeah. Okay. And then his second question comment. What are we supposed to take away from the IRS armed job listing being reposted after the dust settled?
Now, I didn't know that they reposted it, so that's news to me. Boy, that's two wrongs if they did that.
Got to
The
be
whole
willing to carry and use deadly force.
yeah, yeah, the the whole tax agent thing, it needs a little explanation. Uh, the Democrats say it will not impact on these agents coming in and auditing anyone, 400,000 or below. But the Congressional Budget Office estimate, their nonpartisan Congress analytical group, they're saying it will. Uh, the 87,000 new IRS employees, not all, but in a big way, Chip, those are intended to replace up to 50,000 retiring
Right.
IRS employees over the next 5 years or so.
Which makes the $80 billion even that much more ridiculous. Because I mean, they're not going to be spending money on the salaries of those 50,000. I got to thinking about that over the weekend,
Yeah.
and $80 billion for 87,000 employees.
phased phased in. Yeah, well, the I'm not going to justify it, but some of the about a little over, I think around 45 billion are really for the agents. Okay, so half of the, let's say half of it, and that's going to be phased in. But it's still overall, it's over 6 times their normal $12.5 billion funding level, Jeff. So, yeah, a lot of it will go into the getting the IRS into the real world for, computers. You would think
Yeah,
that would have happened before, but it hasn't. They're under COBOL language, and
yeah,
there's not many people who know COBOL anymore.
yeah. That's right. You remember what the tax man used to be called in the Wild West, right?
What?
Revenuers.
Revenuers, yeah. Yep.
I.
Well, they're
That's
going to
what we're
test that
talking
out.
about.
Yeah. Well, and European history tells you they had a lot of conflicts over the over the history
That's
of
right.
trying to collect that revenue. But it is. Ken points out that let's stop inflation by spending billions of dollars. What a bizarre world we live in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good one.
that's a
That's
good way to put it,
perfect,
Ken.
Ken.
A bizarre world, to use a Seinfeld episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're breaking a lot of rules. You do not add to the deficit, even though they say it won't, it will, at a time when you're really concerned about inflation. It just does not make sense in the economic world.
Okay. Take us to some of the ag provisions in the bill, Jim? Maybe focus on conservation.
Conservation, anywhere from 18 to $20 billion. I'm going to call it $18 billion under four significant conservation program fundings, and that's morphed into really the climate change provisions, Chip. So that could be held in good stead because we've been oversubscribed for several years now in some of these conservation programs. The other major one is the basically the debt relief, two different programs that's involved there, and anyone's eligible for that. We need USDA to put out requirements needed for that multi-billion-dollar debt forgiveness program. On the other energy end, we have the extension through 2024 for the biodiesel tax incentive programs. That's a very
Yep.
positive thing in agriculture. And then we have the beginning of the $1.25 a gallon sustainable aviation fuel. And both of those chips are going to be morphed into a new clean fuel type program for the future.
Okay. Jim, I'm telling you, I've never seen such a mixed response from the ag organizations and not just ag organizations, but farm state legislators, Republican congressmen, obviously very just dead set against it, voted against it, and they're going to have to answer to some of the voters in their districts because they voted against putting a cap on insulin prices at $35 a month. They're going to have to answer for voting against some of the biofuel provisions that you just talked about. There's going to be a lot of questions for Republican lawmakers in ag districts, and at the same time, there's going to be a lot of questions for the Democrat lawmakers in their districts as well.
Yeah, it isn't an easy case.
No.
For the Western lawmakers, Kirsten Sinema got the $4 billion, drought resiliency aid, and it just was not only her. That's a pickle that a number of lawmakers they wanted in the Western states, but the American Farm Bureau Federation came out against this bill for an official thing. That's leading a number of farm state lawmakers to really be careful of what they, say about this. On the biofuels, all the biofuel groups should like this because this sets up funding. I think the good part is in the infrastructure. The $500 million to build out ethanol and other biofuel infrastructure. We've needed that for years.
Yeah. Okay. Jim, I remember when the biofuel infrastructure got $100 million and everybody thought that it was just, it was going to be more than enough to cover the bill to get every station out there up and running and pumping higher blends of ethanol.
Theo asked, how often does the government do something that makes sense? I'll answer it two ways. One, when it increases my Social Security payment, getting a little over 9% next year. And second, I would say in a major drought disaster, they provide much needed farmer liquidity and in the food donations up to a degree.
Yeah. Jim, how is this bill going to impact the writing of the next farm bill?
Well, the conservation, that $18 billion or so in conservation, I don't want to get too wonky, is not going to affect the baseline for the next farm bill. However, this does give them, at least for the next few years, a really a big pot of money to flow into the conservation programs. I'll never say a farm bill is easier. This might make it easy. This might make it easier, Chip. But you already have Republican lawmakers saying this is delving into what they should be discussing and doing in a farm bill debate, not in
Yeah.
a reconciliation measure. And they do have a point there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Um, I want to move on. Or do you have anything else that we need to cover with the IRA?
No, now it's going to
Okay.
be as is always the case, and a lot of listeners, and I get a lot of emails. It's now implementation, and it takes the government many months on some of these programs to put out the proposed regulations, et cetera. And that's especially the case with that debt relief program. I wish I knew the details, but I don't because USDA is working on them. So it's going to be months before we see some of these programs be unveiled, Chip.
Right. Right. Okay. Very good. The FBI, they found some top secret documents at Mar-a-Lago, Trump's residence in Florida. What's the situation there, Jim?
It's murky, murky, very murky, even with the so-called details. We really need to see the affidavit, and you're not going to see that unless they officially indict the former president of the United States. And that in itself is Herculean news, Chip, if that were to occur. I know the frustrations on the Republican side is Hillary Clinton had many more top secret items on her drive.
Right.
So the unequal,
And she cleaned that drive. Yeah.
yeah, several ways.
Yes.
And even with James Comey, the former FBI leader, taking a highly secretive document and giving it to someone. So the unequal distribution on this is should be raising a lot of questions. So no, I just think we need more details, and we're not going to get them. And that means, Chip, you're seeing selective leaks by whomever in the administration, like the one last week on nuclear issues relative to the Washington Post. Well, that could be a decoy, you know. So here
Yeah.
we go again, relative to parceling what they want to put out. So we just need more information, and that's what Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa is calling for. He wants more information.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what do you think? Does this do the events around the FBI and Mar-a-Lago, does it up the odds that Trump is going to make a run again in 24?
I think it does. I mean, that's what because it's putting already pressure on DeSantis from Florida, the governor, because Trump is getting all this play, and although more than a few Republicans want to vote for someone else, they're rallying around in support because they think that I don't know whether it's the right word, being picked on, but it's clearly they've got the Democrats in the White House clearly have their arrows pointed at Trump.
Yes. Yes, very much so. Very much so. Okay, let's get to some things that happened over the weekend. And maybe the biggest thing that happened over the weekend for us to talk about is that 5 U.S. lawmakers made a trip to Taiwan.
Additional, and I think you're going to see more trips. But in China, responded by some more drills, Chip. So this is the rat-a-tat-tat thing, you know.
Yeah.
So here we go again. I thought the biggest news from China over the weekend, and we saw it early this morning, is their economy continues to go down to such a degree that they had a surprised reduction in a couple of their interest rates, Chip. And their housing market is much worse than it was. Remember the low days of the U.S. real estate market? It's worse than that. So that's very important from a world economic perspective, because let's face it, we're in a China-centric world
Yeah.
right now. So that, to me, that was the biggest news coming in to the weak, and it's
Yeah.
affecting the financial markets, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. The Chinese response to the representatives making the trip to Taiwan, I think that is something that we need to continue to monitor, and it's not like this. The the response makes me nervous, Jim.
Well, they're gearing up eventually to deal with Taiwan. But the other thing from a geopolitical perspective, Chip, is countries are going to have to decide which way they're going to go. And I think it's not totally involved, but we're seeing the unfolding, the new world order from a disorder. That's how I would write it.
Okay.
We're going into a new ordering system in the world. It's clear to me, and it'll
Okay.
take years to unfold.
Okay, very good. Couple of questions have come in, Jim, and this one's going to go back to government spending. Gary wants to know if there is anything on the school lunch programs. That's part of the nutrition bill in the farm bill, right? The nutrition title.
Yeah. Oh, that's like 80, almost 85% of the farm bill is
Right.
for food and nutrition. But he says anything in school lunch program. I see schools sent out cost of lunches this year. Well, I bet they're higher.
Yeah.
California, from a state level, has said any kid can get free meals in the schools, and because they have a surplus right now. But I'll just tell you, bottom line on food and nutrition. Usually, Congress provide. That's the only way you get a farm bill, Chip, is if the Democrats are pleased enough with the funding level, and it tends
Yeah.
to be high. You're not
Yeah.
going to get a farm bill without an agreement on the food stamp program, or
Right.
SNAP as it's called now. The
Right.
other interesting one from Tanner would be
Yeah.
interesting to learn how much R and research and development is government versus privately funded for pharmaceutical products in terms of stifling new products. Uh, I'll tell you I'll look for the ratio, but not just in pharmaceutical, but in the private industry, what it takes to get a product onto the market, we're
Yeah.
talking a lot of money. I mean, just in the seed area, and I'm
Mhm.
not a cheerleader for the seed companies. However, they put in millions and millions of dollars for years in developing new seed products. Multiply that by X times when it comes to pharmaceutical products. So
Yeah.
this is the potential negative. If you take some of that upside out of the equation, you're going to get fewer products.
Yeah.
It's just logic.
Yeah, one of the estimates was more than 300 new drugs would not be developed over the next 10 years.
Yeah, put a price tag on that.
Right, right. And Adam had a comment there about the China cutting their interest rates, like you were talking about. Obviously, they're having real issues with their economy and the zero COVID policy is part of the issue when they shut down 4 million population areas just like that.
Yes.
It's going to have an impact.
Yes, and this is what they're reporting, Jeff. Now we
Yeah,
don't know whether or not we can uh, 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 rely on those numbers. We shouldn't rely on anything from Russia right now. They're in a war because they showed
yeah,
a number in Russia where their economy went down less than expected. But on China, you have their leader Xi Jinping going into the party congress. I think either late October or early November. He has to be a little nervous here. I think that's one of the reasons why
yeah,
they took that. But it is trouble in China's economy, and some of it's as a result of protesting by the Chinese in the mortgage area.
yeah.
And you haven't ever seen that. So
Right.
yeah, China is not absent from having some macroeconomic issues.
Jim, give us an update on the latest that you know on the movement of grain out of Ukraine. Looks like a total of 16
Six,
vessels have
16
left
vessels.
the
Yeah,
Black Sea.
I like to say this, I hope it succeeds, but you add up those 16 vessels, Chip, on the tonnage, and it's not very much.
No.
So I want to see the big companies, the traditional world grain exporters get involved there, and I really haven't seen it so far. This is more into either the absolute need for food aid, if you will, but I want to see those tonnage levels go up a lot.
Absolutely. Uh, Chris has a question here, Jim. Is there going to be any more help for beginning farmers?
Yes, there is, and
Mhm.
each year, and this is one where I'll compliment Ag Secretary Vilsack. He's looked at the future of agriculture, and he's trying to come up with innovative ways to get more, beginning farmers. But I'll tell you, over 50 years ago, when I started in this business of ag. One of my first stories I was asked to research was the entry and exit problems in agriculture, and part of that was beginning farmers. So it really hasn't changed all that much in over 50 years, Chip. And I
Right.
just don't think you can throw money at it now. And in fact, the cost of entry into U.S. agriculture, I don't think I have to convince too many listeners of that, is huge.
Oh, yeah. Believe me, I've tried, and it is not easy. No
Yeah,
question
the
about it.
best programs I've seen for beginning farmers is a joint between federal programs and state programs, and there are areas that they have helped out. Okay, but
The
we,
best,
we'll continue. That's why I love these questions on signal
yeah.
to noise. We do further research, and then we'll come back with some items.
Yeah, the best program that I've seen to get a new farmer started has nothing to do with the government, and it has everything to do with a mentor that is ready to move on and retire and doesn't have anybody in the family that is stepping up to be the next generation on that farm.
That and well-financed parents and
Yeah,
grandparents.
yes, but I'm telling you, even beyond that, it is that landowner that doesn't have the next generation coming up. If you can get that relationship going with that guy, and and they're willing to help you out, there's your entry.
Yeah, and let's connect some dots here. We've talked about over the years the rural urban divide.
Oh
With
yeah,
the technology we're seeing unfold in the rural countryside, still unfolding, with the better internet that allows better health care, telehealth, things like that, and with uh, younger farmers who went off the farm to go to college or whatever into business. Now they're wanting to begin families. They want to go, in many cases, they want to go back to the rural countryside. And that's where you're going to see where they have some funding on their own, Chip. So the
yeah,
brain drain, part of the brain drain is returning. And that's very good news to me.
yeah, yeah. Don't forget that you can marry into some of that land too. I
Yeah.
just,
Either way, just saying.
I'm just saying. I'm
Yeah.
just
Or
saying.
have a rich uncle.
That's right. There you go. There you go. Chinese President Xi Jinping is going to go to Saudi Arabia this week. Jim.
That's big news. It's his first travel since the pandemic, I
Yep.
think. And remember when Biden conversed with
Yep.
the Saudis, didn't go so well. He got
No.
just a little increase, not much at all. This is very interesting, Chip.
Do you think it'll be fist bump relations?
Huh?
Fist bump relations?
Maybe under the robe.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it is key to point out that the Saudis, and I had an item this morning, Aramco had what, a 90% increase in their profits.
Yep.
It's just huge. So, Saudi Arabia, you've seen in the news, golfing in the
Yep.
golf sector,
Right.
they're flexing some muscles lately.
Darn right. Darn right. Very quickly here. It's dry in Europe. Very dry.
Oh, and it's not getting better. So I
Right.
think this is a growing story, Chip, in Europe. The Rhine River is going to be stopped pretty soon for navigation,
Yep.
and that'll affect the grains. But I also want to point out Mexico, Monterrey. I have a friend who used to live in Texas, now is in Monterrey, and he's helping me working on a story on. He said they can't get water.
Yeah.
They can't get water. So Mexico has a portion of that country bone dry.
Yep. All right. There's a couple of other issues that I would like to talk about, but we're going to have to save it. We're talking about new trade plans with Taiwan. We'll talk about that the next time that we get together. And the other thing that is going to happen because we're going to be on crop tour next week. So sorry, there won't be a signal to noise on Monday morning. But it looks like student debt, the pause in the payments on student debt ends August 31.
Oh, you can guarantee. There's not many things I'm 100% on in this town. You can guarantee an announcement prior to the cessation of that. Plus, closer to the election, some more debt forgiveness on the part of selected students at a certain at a certain income level.
Yep. All right, Jim, let's wrap things up right now. Today on AgriTalk, we've got Machinery Pete, and we're going to be taking a look at weather through the end of August and into the first half of September with Kevin Marcus from Marcus Weather Consulting. Have a great week, everybody. Keep watching for those signals.